What the Baltimore Ravens just did is either the boldest and most brilliant decision any NFL franchise has made in the last decade, or it is the kind of move that looks incredible right up until the moment it all comes crashing down. There is no middle ground here. There is no safe interpretation. When an organization goes all in, truly, completely, without reservation, all in on one player, one vision, one bet that everything they are building rises and falls on the arm and the legs and the brilliant football mind of a single human being, they are making a statement that cannot be taken back. The Ravens have made that statement. They have committed everything to Lamar Jackson, and right now, the entire NFL is asking the same question out loud. Is this the Super Bowl window finally opening? Or is this the most beautiful pressure cooker in the league about to reach its breaking point? To understand what the Baltimore Ravens are doing right now, to truly grasp the magnitude and the meaning of their all-in commitment to Lamar Jackson, you have to understand what the Baltimore Ravens are, what they have always been, and what it has meant for them to arrive at this particular moment in their organizational history. Because the Ravens are not a franchise that makes decisions carelessly. They are not an organization that swings for the fences on emotion, or chases headlines, or lets the noise of the moment drive choices that will define the franchise for years. They are, by every reasonable measure, one of the most thoughtfully and consistently well-run organizations in professional football. And when an organization like that goes all in on anything, when the Ravens tell the world that they are betting everything on one player and one vision, it demands to be taken seriously. The Ravens were built on a foundation of defensive excellence and organizational discipline. Their first Super Bowl championship, won after the 2000 season, was built around one of the most dominant defenses in NFL history, a unit so suffocating, so physically punishing, so relentlessly well-coached that it remains the standard against which all subsequent great defenses are measured. Their second championship, won after the 2012 season, was built around the leadership and experience of Joe Flacco at his absolute peak, a quarterback who had always been underestimated, and who, in that playoff run, was so unguardable that the entire conversation about his legacy was transformed in the span of a few weeks. These championships were not accidents. They were the product of an organizational approach that valued stability, that valued the long view, that valued building something real over chasing something shiny. And then, Lamar Jackson arrived, and everything changed in a way that even the Ravens front office, as thoughtful and experienced as it is, probably did not fully anticipate when they selected him in the first round of the 2018 NFL Draft. Because Lamar Jackson is not a player who fits neatly into any organizational framework. He is not a player who can be fully understood through any conventional evaluation system. He is, in the most complete and accurate sense of the word, a phenomenon. A player whose combination of physical gifts, football intelligence, competitive intensity, and personal charisma has produced something at the quarterback position that the NFL had never quite seen before and has not seen since. The early years of Lamar Jackson's tenure with the Ravens were a process of mutual discovery. The organization was learning what it had, learning how to build an offense that maximized his unique abilities, learning what it meant to have a quarterback who could do things with a football that previous Ravens quarterbacks could not do. And Lamar was learning the professional game, learning the Ravens organization, learning how to be a franchise quarterback in the most complete sense of that role. The leadership, the film study, the preparation, the ability to be the constant around which everything else in the building organizes itself. The process was not always smooth. There were struggles, there were questions, there were moments when the skepticism that had followed him out of college, the people who had wanted to move him to wide receiver, who had questioned whether a player of his size and style could survive as an NFL quarterback long-term, felt like it might be finding some footing. And then the 2019 season happened, and every question was answered at once and in the most emphatic way possible. Lamar Jackson's 2019 season was not just great, it was historic. The unanimous MVP, the rushing records for a quarterback that had previously seemed permanent and untouchable, The passing numbers that proved beyond any remaining doubt that he was not just a running quarterback who could throw, but a complete offensive player whose arm was as dangerous as his legs. The wins, the remarkable, stunning, sometimes absurd wins that came week after week as the Ravens rolled through the NFL with an offense that opponents could not solve and could barely slow down. It was the kind of season that reorganizes your understanding of what a player can be, that forces you to find new language to describe what you are watching, that makes people stop and say out loud that they are seeing something they have never seen before. The playoff loss that followed, the loss that ended that extraordinary season without a championship, was the first entry in a chapter of the Lamar Jackson story that has defined the conversation around him ever since. The playoff losses, the inability so far to translate the regular season dominance into the championship that would, in the minds of his critics, complete the story and settle every remaining debate about his place among the greatest players at his position. This is the conversation that the Ravens are trying to end with their all-in commitment. This is the pressure they are taking on. This is the bet they are making. Not just that Lamar Jackson is a great player, that has been settled, but that Lamar Jackson, with the right pieces around him and the right organizational commitment behind him, can do what has not yet been done, can win the Super Bowl, can bring a championship back to Baltimore for the first time since that February night in New Orleans in 2013. The contract situation that preceded the current moment was one of the most closely watched and discussed negotiations in recent NFL history. Lamar Jackson famously represented himself in his contract negotiations, a decision that was met with widespread skepticism from the conventional wisdom of the sports media world, which has spent decades insisting that athletes need professional representation to navigate the complexities of NFL contract structures and salary cap implications. Jackson did it his way. He held his position. He maintained his value. He made clear to the Ravens organization and to the entire league that he understood his worth and was not going to accept less than what that worth demanded. And ultimately, he got the deal he wanted, a deal that made him, at the time of signing, the highest paid player in NFL history by the measure of average annual value. A deal that was a statement from him about himself and from the Ravens about how they saw him and what they were willing to commit to make sure he stayed in Baltimore. That contract was the foundation of the all-in commitment. But the contract was only the beginning. The commitment goes deeper than money. It is expressed in every roster decision, every free agent signing, every draft selection, every organizational priority that the Ravens have set in the period since that contract was signed. The question guiding every football decision in Baltimore has been the same question. Does this make us better positioned to win a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson at quarterback? Not in 5 years, not in a theoretical future when the roster is fully built and the pieces are perfectly in place. Now, in this window, while Lamar is in his prime, while the offense is at its most developed, while the competitive opportunity is as clear as it has ever been. The roster construction that has followed that philosophy has been aggressive. The Ravens have invested at the skill positions surrounding Lamar in ways that previous versions of Baltimore's offense never prioritized in the same way. The receiving core has been upgraded, the offensive line has been tended to with the understanding that protecting the most valuable player on the team, and in certain metrics, the most valuable player in the entire league, is a non-negotiable organizational priority. The defensive side of the ball, which has always been the Ravens' identity and always been a point of organizational pride, has been maintained at a level of investment that reflects the understanding that you cannot win championships with offense alone, that the Ravens' DNA is defensive, and that abandoning that identity in pursuit of an offensive-first philosophy would be a mistake even as the offense has become the engine of this team's success. The result of all this construction, all this investment, all this prioritization, all this organizational focus on maximizing the Super Bowl window is a roster that looks, on paper, as formidable as any the Ravens have put together in the post-Ray Lewis era.
The talent is there at multiple positions. The coaching is there, with John Harbaugh representing one of the most accomplished and respected head coaches in the NFL, a man who has been in Baltimore long enough to be considered part of the franchise's identity and who has the trust of ownership, the front office, and most importantly, the quarterback, in a way that creates the kind of organizational coherence that championship teams require. The scheme is there. The offensive infrastructure that has been built around Lamar's unique abilities is as sophisticated and as difficult to defend as anything in the league. And yet, the pressure is real. It is impossible to talk honestly about the Ravens going all in on Lamar without talking about the pressure that comes with that commitment. When an organization makes a bet this large, financially, structurally, competitively, and when the player at the center of that bet has the specific history that Lamar Jackson has, the expectations become a weight that every person in that building carries. The question that hangs over every Ravens season now is not whether they will have a good season, it is whether they will win the Super Bowl. That is what all in means. All in means that a good season is not good enough. All in means that anything short of a championship is, at some level, a disappointment relative to the resources committed and the potential identified. All in means that the pressure is not background noise. It is the central reality of every day, of every week, of every month, of every season, until the mission is accomplished. Lamar Jackson himself carries this pressure with what appears to be remarkable equanimity. He is not a player who expresses the weight of expectation in obvious ways. He does not talk about legacies and championships in the way that some players do, does not seem to be consumed by the narrative machinery surrounding him. He prepares, he competes. He shows up to training camp and to practice and to games with the same energy and the same joy and the same explosive brilliance that has always defined him. But everyone around him, the coaches, the teammates, the front office personnel, the ownership group, everyone around him understands what is at stake. Everyone around him understands that this window, like all windows, will not be open forever. That the physical gifts that make Lamar Jackson what he is will eventually, inevitably, begin to be affected by time and the accumulation of a career spent doing things with his body that quarterbacks are not supposed to be able to do. That the opportunity in front of the Baltimore Ravens right now is real and extraordinary and finite.
The AFC landscape adds its own dimension of pressure to the Ravens situation. The conference that Lamar Jackson plays in is one of the most competitive in recent NFL history. The Kansas City Chiefs, led by Patrick Mahomes, have established a dynasty that has reset the standard for what sustained excellence in the AFC looks like. Multiple Super Bowl appearances, multiple championships, a level of organizational consistency and competitive excellence that forces every other team in the conference to measure itself against the highest possible standard. The Ravens have been among the most credible challengers to the Chiefs' AFC dominance, but credible challenger and champion are two different things. The all-in commitment is, in part, an acknowledgement that credible is not enough, that the goal is not to be the best team in the AFC that is not Kansas City. The goal is to be better than Kansas City. The goal is to win the Super Bowl. The other contenders in the AFC, teams that have invested heavily in their own quarterback situations, that have made their own aggressive moves to position themselves as championship contenders, are watching the Ravens' all-in approach and making their own calculations. The pressure that comes with going all in is not just internal, it is competitive. Every team in the conference knows what Baltimore is trying to do. Every defensive coordinator in the AFC spends significant resources trying to find new ways to slow down Lamar Jackson. Every team building a roster is doing so with the knowledge that the Ravens are the standard against which their own construction must be measured. And in Baltimore, in the city itself, among the fan base that has supported this franchise through everything, that remembers the Modell era in the move from Cleveland, that builds something in that city around a team that was genuinely its own, the expectation has shifted, not gradually, but completely. The Ravens fan base is not a group of people hoping to have a good season and maybe make a playoff run. They are a group of people who believe, with genuine conviction, that their team has one of the 2 or 3 best players in the world at the most important position in the sport,
and that this belief creates an obligation to themselves, to the player, to the organization, to go get what that talent makes possible. The all-in commitment is not just an organizational philosophy, it is a response to the expectations of a fan base that has been promised everything and is waiting to receive it. The media conversation around the Ravens going all in has been, predictably, divided between admiration for the boldness and concern about the pressure. The admiration camp points to the roster, the coaching, the organizational coherence, the historical precedence of teams that committed fully to a generational talent and were rewarded with championships. The concern camp points to the playoff history, to the specific challenges of winning in January with a style of play that has produced complicated results in the coldest and most hostile playoff environments, to the fundamental uncertainty of a postseason where any given Sunday can produce any given result, regardless of how well constructed a team appears to be in October and November. Both camps are right. Both camps are looking at the same situation from angles that illuminate real truths about what the Ravens are doing and what it means. The admiration is warranted because what Baltimore has built around Lamar Jackson is genuinely impressive. A real championship contender with real strengths at every level of the roster and a real chance to do something historic. The concern is warranted because all in is not a guarantee. It is a commitment to a path, not a promise of a destination. The destination requires winning football games against great opponents in high-pressure situations where execution and health and fortune all play roles that no amount of roster construction or organizational planning can fully control.
What is not in dispute is that the Baltimore Ravens have made their choice. They have looked at what they have in Lamar Jackson, at the full picture of what he is and what he makes possible, and they have decided that the only appropriate response to having a player of that caliber is to give him everything he needs to reach the ultimate goal. No half measures, no hedging, no building for a future that is somehow separate from the present. The present is the opportunity. The present is what they are building for. Lamar Jackson is in his prime. The window is open, and the Ravens are going through it. Whether a championship is waiting on the other side of that commitment is a question that will be answered on football fields, in playoff games, in the moments that separate the teams that win championships from the teams that had everything they needed and still came up short. But the commitment itself, the decision to go all in, to bet everything on a player, in a vision, in a belief that this group of people, in this city, at this moment, can do what the game demands, that commitment is real. It is total, and it is, in its way, one of the most compelling stories in professional football right now. The Super Bowl window is open, the pressure is enormous, and the Baltimore Ravens, with Lamar Jackson at the center of everything they are doing, have decided that they would rather carry that pressure than spend another year wondering what might have been possible if they had been willing to commit fully to the player they have always known was special enough to deserve exactly that. Great franchises are defined not just by the championships they win, but by the moments when they look at what they have and choose to go for it completely. The Baltimore Ravens have had that moment. They have looked at Lamar Jackson, at everything he is, and everything he makes possible, and they have said yes, all the way, without reservation. The Super Bowl window is real, the pressure is real, and the story of whether this commitment produces the championship it was built to deliver is going to be one of the most compelling stories in the NFL for as long as this window remains open. In Baltimore, the time is now, and the Ravens have made sure that everyone knows it. Disclaimer. This video is based on publicly available reports, NFL analysis, media coverage, contract reporting, roster news, and ongoing developments surrounding the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson as of the time of production. Some details regarding internal organizational strategy and decision-making are drawn from industry reporting and sourced accounts and have not been independently verified. This content is produced for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not represent the official positions of the Baltimore Ravens, the NFL, Lamar Jackson, or any other individual or organization mentioned.